Hi, and welcome to the first video of something I've been meaning to do for a while. I'm making a rag quilt out of old clothing and remnants. I have been working on this for quite some time, and I honestly wasn't planning on doing this quite this way. I was going to finish what I was working on and then go back and make this recording in a group of different recordings. But, as happens quite often, things change. So I just wanted to start at the beginning and share some of why I'm doing this. So, a long time ago, well, let me start here. I felt recently, well, not quite recently, but a few months back, that it was time to make this quilt. I felt the Lord leading me to do that. And it really started quite a long time ago because I had been cleaning out my house and coming across all these old clothes of my children that I have kept. And they were too torn up to really give away, but not something I really wanted to just throw in the trash. And so I had felt like I wanted to make this quilt back then. And I have made one that I actually gave to my mother when she broke her back. And I learned a lot in that and how to make them. But this just felt like it was the right time. And in the process, the Lord has been teaching me through this activity, and it's been such a blessing. And so that's what I want to share with you guys today and in the weeks to come as I put more of these videos together. Now, I'm not done with this quilt yet, so it's kind of a work in progress. But I do want to start with how you would begin. Well, obviously, collecting a lot of fabric would be one of those things. In this culture, it's so common to just discard anything that we don't need right away, or that maybe got damaged or broken. It's just kind of sad. Because there can be a lot of beauty in utilizing things for its purpose and function, right? It's what it's intended for, or making it into something new so that its intention is something else. So anyway, I would see all these clothes of my children and remember all of the things that they did and how much they liked. That was their favorite pair of pants, and it shows or whatever. And it was just good. It's good to witness, and it's really our relationships that are valuable in this world, our love for each other, and so the relationship memories are the building blocks of your relationships. They're what builds it. These experiences that we have together. And so a quilt's really fun when it's a memory quilt, or when it's a rag quilt, or when it's a family quilt, which is what mine is. It's going to be my children's and my family's. I think a couple of my cousins, or my nieces and nephews, my kids' cousins, clothing as well. So anyway, but this idea of the remnant, right? The remnant is so powerful. There's power in the remnant of Israel. And I started to see these parallels between the Lord as our Father gathering his remnant together in preparation to make a quilt. Okay, well, I mean, that's kind of a metaphor, but You get where I'm coming from with this. We're his children. And he's not going to just discard us when we get a little broken, right? That's what the world does. That's not what God does. That's what the world does. They just, you're broken now. We only want what's good. We only want what's new. We only want what's perfect and pretty. Pop culture Christianity, which is something I heard recently from a lady that I've seen online, and I just thought, oh, pop Christianity. Yeah, that's about right. Right? Just that. That's not God. Just like me looking at these clothes, these items, and saying, I can't. Like, I'm not gonna just throw away memories. Right? Obviously, okay, maybe hoarding things is not good. I'm not saying go that route, but to see the value in something, that's important. So there's a lot that there's a lot to this idea of the remnant, but it was much more powerful than I thought it would be. And this is obviously the first thing that you have to do is to start cutting. Well, obviously you collected it. You didn't just destroy all of the children's clothing, right? Just like God did not destroy all of us just because some of it was bad, right? He saved all of it, and he is saving all of it, good and bad, because the good is mixed in with the bad, right? What he wants to keep is mixed in with what is that can't be salvaged, right? Because that's what it is. He wants to salvage every little scrap that he can, every piece of his body, his church, his people. If he can save it, he's going to save it. He doesn't want any of his children to be destroyed. He doesn't. Just like I don't want to cut away any more than I have to. I want to use every scrap of fabric that I can possibly use. In fact, you know, I think I'm actually going to talk about that right now. I was going to show you how I cut a pair of pants so I can get the most out of it and all of that. But I'm going to do this instead. Right here, I have some fabric. It's actually a fair amount. But this week, I actually I've wanted to do this for a while, but this week just happened to be when I got to do it. I had bought a bunch of fabric, and it was just a huge blessing. I got it for almost nothing for what it was basically free. Anyway, and I really like it. It matched the room that I wanted curtains in. And so I cut the fabric this week. My mother was nice enough to come over and help me with something else, and we did that together. It was really nice. So we cut the fabric, put those curtains up, and it looks great. I'm very happy with it. And then it was like, well, what am I going to do with the rest of this? I could throw it away. I don't need it. It doesn't fit anywhere else. There's nothing that I can use it for as a curtain, right? And this is funny because then I started to write this, well, to make some notes on what we're talking about now in the remnant. And one of the mentions in scripture of this word remnant comes in Exodus 26:12. And it's talking about the leftover pieces of the curtains in the tabernacle. So basically what happened was there's some leftover. And I just thought it was cool what God had them do with the leftover pieces. And I think I want to talk about that a little bit later too, but I thought this was really neat. Because he says here in Exodus 26:12 that and the overlapping parts of the rest of the curtains of the tent, the half curtain that remains, shall hang over the back of the dwelling place. And then it goes on, and a cubit on one side and a cubit on the other side of what remains of the length of the curtains of the tent is to hang over the sides of the dwelling place on this side and on that side to cover it. And you shall make a covering around. Okay. So God didn't just take what was left over and just, we don't need any more of that. He used it. It's the remnant. It's what was left over. Right? But then you see other things in other verses. When I looked up the actual meaning of the word remnant, one of the things that came up was what was not destroyed, I believe, what survived, what was left. This kind of idea of what was left. So then I was praying about, well, I was preparing, I should say. I don't know if I was actively like praying at this point, but as I was preparing to, to sit down and make this recording, I was looking up a couple of different verses that had come to mind, making some notes. And the one that came to mind was not what I had originally thought I would focus on immediately. But it was, and I have it here. Oh, here we go. Jeremiah 23. Because it talks about the Lord gathering the remnant of his people. Now, when this popped in my mind, I don't know if I've read Jeremiah, but I saw something different this time when I was reading this, and it really surprised me. It's so amazing when the Lord is showing you something and you just keep learning something new every time. So I'm trying to find it here now. Okay, so Jeremiah 23, and in verse 3, he says, "Therefore I shall gather the remnant of my flock out of all the lands where I have driven them, and shall bring them back to their fold, and they shall bear and increase." So I'm looking for my glasses again. Okay, so let me just put these up here. I don't lose them again. To gather the remnant of his people. And we're going to come back to that, because I think this verse, this chapter, when I read it just now, right before I started recording this, I was like, wow, everything else that I had been thinking about all week when I was kind of contemplating this all comes back to this chapter, and it's really quite beautiful. So, anyway, I just wanted to talk about that. But I also want to talk about cutting this up. Okay, so this is a pair of pants. And I know, I even use the zippers. So if you're not going to use the zipper, obviously you don't have to do this. But I cut out the zipper. I try to get pretty close, and I actually have a rotary tool that I often will use. I'm not going to, because it would be hard to record it the way I'm sitting. So, but I will cut out the zipper from if it's a pair of pants. I cut off the buttons. I use the buttons too if it's a shirt. And I actually use the zippers for things. But that doesn't matter. And I also save the pockets. Actually, I'll cut out the pockets, because pockets can be fun. A long time ago, I made a purse out of Isaiah's favorite pair of pants when they could not be salvaged anymore, right? And it served as my purse for quite some time. It was the cutest little purse. Anyway, but so what I will do is actually leave a seam, okay? Because the goal will be to have a bunch of squares of fabric that we'll be sewing together. And the edges, the raw edges, will actually be exposed so that when you wash them, it will fray. And that's actually how we're going to do the rag quilt look. And it's really cute. I like them a lot. You don't have to do it that way. In fact, you could, quilt it like you would anything else. But for me, I don't have the means necessarily to do a full size quilt. So I do it this way. And you can quilt by the square too. And anyway, there's options. There's options, but I'm going to do it this way for this particular project. So this is just a square that I've already done. from a different pair of pants, but I even save the little pieces because you can make a square out of the little pieces. I have to iron this before I sew it together, but you can see where I'm coming from. And I'll actually have like 4 or 5 different pieces of fabric sewed together. So I just need a little bit of fabric because I'll add it to something else and it'll become big enough that I can put it together. So this is how I can save as much as possible out of this. So, because if I cut down the center of this pair of pants, I'll just show you a little bit. I would not do it this way, obviously, when I'm doing it myself, but I don't have the board I cut on or my rotary tool out, so I'm just going to use these. Anyway, so as you can see, it'll open up the pair of pants, and because it's a rag quilt, I'll actually just cut the square right out, even with the seam. It doesn't really matter because that's the look I'm going for. You don't have to do that. You can cut the seam out. It doesn't matter. But for me, that's where I'm going with it. I like that look. So this is actually corduroys, not denim. But some of the more stretchy stuff you have to put an interfacing with, but I digress. This is not the point right now. So you cut it out enough that you can cut these squares out. Now for me, this pair of pants, and I can't remember what was wrong with this. I think there was a hole somewhere. Anyway, but this one's actually in fairly good shape. I don't normally cut up articles of clothing that I can give away. Like here's a pair of shorts of my son's that is in very good condition, so I will find somebody who needs that because there's really nothing wrong with that. But these, I had a hole in the seam. Well, anyway, regardless, there's a reason I wouldn't have put it with the rest of them. So anyway, but we don't want to just cut everything away and then just throw away everything. Now, I've been doing this for months, okay, just on and off because I never have time to do anything. But I had bags and bags of clothes in my basement. And by the time I made half of the squares that I'll be using, because I'm only about halfway there, because I was sewing as I was going, trying to salvage as much as I could. As well, maybe I'm more than halfway, probably 2/3 of the way, something like that. So I ended up with bags of remnants that will be discarded. That they're so tattered or torn or stained that they cannot be used. Right? Some of them I used for other things that I could. But for the most part, I threw away a lot. And, I think about that. And I'm grateful that the Lord, when He is gathering His remnant, He's still trying to to save as many as He can, right? I believe that. So that's kind of how you would cut that out. And I usually cut down the seam, and I save what I can for whatever else other projects that I will use. And it doesn't have to be denim. It doesn't have to be corduroy. I'll be using some of their t-shirts. I just have to stabilize the fabric, and it can be whatever it needs to be. So once you get it cut out, then it's just a matter of cutting it down into the squares. And that's pretty straightforward. I have a cutting board that has the lines on it, so I can just cut the size that I need. And I have, the guides to use the rotary tool, and if it's a straight line, it's pretty easy. But I have, the first one that I made, which was not a rag quilt, it was a regular quilt, baby quilt, lap quilt, whatever. And I just used a pair of scissors and I traced with a stencil the size that I needed and cut it out that way. It was very time consuming and hard on the hands, so I recommend a rotary tool if you're going to be quilting on a regular basis. So, which I don't, but I still have it for other things. Anyway, so in the definition of remnant, or at least the word that I was looking at from Jeremiah 23, I believe it was the remaining part, survivors, especially after a slaughter. It's kind of the idea of what that was. And so this is definitely this picture, as we're cutting this away, of what is remaining after we've destroyed this garment. And the destruction has to come in order for something new to be made. Especially when this garment that I'm cutting up is no longer wearable. It cannot be used anymore. It has become so and that's painful. So I want to talk a little bit about the actual cutting, right? Because, you know, and myself included, I've done it. We sometimes want to do it ourselves, right? And so we think, oh, well, we got to cut these bad things out of our lives, right? At least this what kind of some of the things I was thinking. Not me, but I was like, he's showing me these things as I'm going through this and thinking about remnants, and I just was in awe of what he was showing me, that the remnant has to be cast out. Because how do you do that? This is the culmination of a lot of questions that I've had over the last few months. One of those questions was about, you know, how we're to interact with people in our lives that cause us struggle and various things. And the impulse is to just cut them out, right? Well, not really my impulse. I'm actually fairly persistent, usually, unless there's some sort of danger to my family. I'm fairly, what's the word? It's not, I'm persistent in my relationships. I'm not apt to give up on people. And so, a lot of times we want to cut people out, right? And I'm using this metaphorically because we're one body. And one of the things that we're going to talk about as we start making this quilt is that the Lord takes the remnant of his people and will be putting it together, because we are one body, we are one church. But we're not acting in that way right now. And he's going to do that. He's going to gather the remnant of his people, and he's going to put us all together. Like I have faith, right? I know we already are together. This is the beautiful part. We already are. Oh, I can't wait to tell you guys about that later. So a lot of times we want to cut out this person. We want to cut out that person. And I've even been told to do that, right? To cut that person out. And that's righteous. Like that picture was painted, that it was righteous to protect the whole. But it's not for us to decide that. And it's for God to do. I just want to use this illustration. I have this fabric. Can this fabric cut this fabric away from this fabric? Right? It can't. Do you know what that looks like when it does it? When the fabric tears, it doesn't just ruin and cut away. It makes it so it's not easily repairable without also doing all these other things, right? It's not a good thing to tear the fabric when it does itself. We can't sew ourselves together. We can't do this. This is what I'm saying. God does this, and I believe it's in Jeremiah 23. Therefore, therefore I shall gather the remnant of my flock out of all the lands where I have driven them, and shall bring them back to the fold, and they shall bear and increase. And I shall raise up shepherds over them, and shall feed them, and they shall fear no more, nor be discouraged. Okay, I'm going to read this whole chapter, so just be prepared for that. But God does this, not the remnant. Not the remnant. And we see this repeatedly in Scripture, and I didn't see this before. I could not understand certain things that I saw in Scripture. And of course, because He's a good and faithful Father and teacher, He has revealed that to me, right? And so the first thing that I thought about was Nebuchadnezzar. And I'm actually going to talk about Exodus as well, but Nebuchadnezzar and the story of the three boys. And that is in Daniel chapter 3. So basically, and I'm going to kind of paraphrase, so you guys need to go back and read this for yourself. But Nebuchadnezzar built this idol, and he wanted everyone to bow down and worship it, essentially, every time they heard the sound of a musical instrument. And I believe that's how that goes. Now, if I can find the book of Daniel, that'd be fantastic. And when the three boys, and we're going to get there, decided not to do it, he threw them in the furnace. This is a terrible story, right? But it's a beautiful story because, just let me get there. Let me get there. So, yes, Daniel chapter 3. And so, Nebuchadnezzar, so what are these boys' names? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And they get thrown into the furnace because they won't do it. And this was all a scheme, really, to make the Israelites look like they were not respecting Nebuchadnezzar. Because he made an idol. He was telling them how they had to worship. And they wouldn't do it. And so he cast them into the furnace. He said, "Get out!" Now, these people were people that he trusted because he trusted Daniel. Right? Because at the end of chapter 2, and Daniel asked of the sovereign, and he set Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the work of the province of Babel, and Daniel in the gate of the sovereign. So it's not like these were just some random people, right? And he hardened his heart against them to kill them and put them in the furnace to die. Because they wouldn't do it. I have a point, I promise. So see, the Lord separated the remnant of his people from this person. Not by making them say, I'm not going to be around you, but by making him cast him out. We're going to get into this because, the stone the builder rejected. That is the power of the remnant. Oh, it's so exciting. I have no idea. I'm so grateful to have been discarded now that I've learned this. Yes, right? It's like, yeah, good, throw me out. So it's great because when they went into the furnace, Nebuchadnezzar saw that there was a fourth person with him, right? That was like the Son of God. I believe that's the words that was used. Look, in verse 25 of chapter 3, he answered and said, Look, I see 4 men loose walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt, and the form of the fourth is like the son of Elohim. Then Nebuchadnezzar went near the mouth of the burning furnace of fire. He spoke and said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High Allah, come out and come here. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came from the midst of the fire, and the viceroys and nobles and the governors and the sovereigns' counselors gathered together, seeing these men on whose bodies the fire had no power, and the hair of their head was not singed, nor were their garments changed, nor did the smell of fire come on them. Nebuchadnezzar responded and said, Blessed be the Allah of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who sent his messenger and delivered his servants who trusted in him and changed the sovereign's order, and gave up their bodies that they should not serve nor do obeisance to any Allah except their own Allah. Therefore, I make a decree that whoever of any people, nation, or language who speaks any wrong against the Allah of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, his limb shall be taken and his house made a dunghill, because there is no other Allah who is able to deliver like this. Then the sovereign promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babel. Right? So, what happened when they became the remnant, when they were cast out and left over to put aside? They became the remnant. They were separated. And there was power there. And the Lord, because of the power of being with the Lord, showed Nebuchadnezzar, I can't say it. Anyway, showed the king who God was. Now, I'm speculating here, but I can only imagine that may have brought hearts and souls to the Lord to see that. When you're cast out into the fire, into the darkness, and you still shine with the light of the Lord, that's power. Why? Because I mean, there's so many things that I could say about that. That's the power of being the remnant. That's the power. He's not going to leave you and abandon you. That's what the devil, he convinced me of that for many, many years. And it's just not true. You may not see him, you may not feel him. You may not, but he's still there. So that was one of the thoughts, right? They had to be cast out to be the remnant, to be left over. How can you be left over to be used for something else if you're still part of the broken whole? You can't be. And we're going to come back to that in Jeremiah, because what we see in Jeremiah 23, the beginning of Jeremiah 23. Well, we'll come back to that. So, one of the other things that I thought about, some other examples of the way the Lord separates us from people by hardening other people's hearts. He's going to separate us, right? All we have to do is be true to who he is, and it will make them crazy enough to get rid of us. They will do it. We don't have to be mean to them. Okay, sometimes you have to be mean to somebody. You lose your temper. It happens. Repent, right? If you should, right? Sometimes you have to be firm with people. So, but Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they straight told the king, after he said, if you do this, whatever, in verse 16, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the sovereign, O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter, for if so, our Elah, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning furnace and of fire, and from your hand, O sovereign, he does deliver. So they're just basically telling him, no, we're not. They're just being them, right? What the king was saying cannot change who they are in the Lord. You know how hard that is to do? In today's cancel culture? Do you know how hard that is to do, to stay true to God? Now, I don't know why I'm going to tell you this, but it just feels like the right thing to say. And I wish that I could remember the verse off the top of my head, but it reminds me of the story of the man that got eaten by a lion, okay? Because this story, like, blew my mind. That this prophet got eaten by a lion. It really unsettled me, right? Because, okay, well, I'm going to read it. It's in 1 Kings 13, chapter 13. And basically, here we go. If you guys don't know this story, I mean, I think it's important, and it's something that, it sticks with me, right? So, because it's pretty horrific. He gets eaten by a lion. I mean, that's pretty bad. Like, Lord, I don't want to get eaten by no lion. And I told my son this when I was thinking about this a couple weeks back. And I just kept saying, I'm not getting eaten by no lion. We're done here, right? So it says in 1 Kings 13, and see a man of Elohim, a man of God, went from Judah to Bethel by the word of the Lord, while Jeroboam was standing by the slaughter place to burn incense. And he cried out against the slaughter place by the word of the Lord, and said, O slaughter place, thus said, my pages are sticking together. Hold on a second. Thus said the Lord, see, a son is to be born to the house of David. Joshiahu is his name, and on you he shall slaughter the priests of the high places who burn incense on you, and men's bones be burned on you. And he gave a sign the same day, saying, This is the sign which the Lord has spoken. See, the slaughter place is split apart, and the ashes on it is poured out. And it came to be, when sovereign Jeroboam heard the saying of the man of Elohim, who cried out against the slaughter place in Bethel, that he stretched out his hand from the slaughter place, saying, Seize him. Then his hand, which he stretched out toward him, dried up, so that he was unable to bring it back to him. And the slaughter place was split apart, and the ashes poured out from the slaughter place, according to the sign which the man of Elohim had given by the word of the Lord. And the sovereign answered and said to the man of Elohim, Please appease the face of the Lord your Elohim, and pray for me, that my hand might be restored to me. And the man of Elohim appeased the face of the Lord, and the sovereign's hand was restored to him, and became as it was before. The sovereign then said to the man of Elohim, Come home and with me and refresh yourself, and I give you a gift. But the man of Elohim said to the sovereign, If you were to give me half your house, I do not go in with you, nor do I eat bread, nor drink water in this place. For so he commanded me by the word of the Lord, saying, Do not eat bread, nor drink water, nor return by the same way you came. So he went another way, and did not return by the way he came to Bethel. And a certain old prophet was dwelling in Bethel. Okay, guys, so this part right here totally, like, flabbergasted me for a long time. So, and a certain old prophet was dwelling in Bethel, and his son came and told him all the works that the man of Elohim had done that day in Bethel, and the words which he had spoken to the sovereign. And their father said to them, which way did he go? And his sons had seen which way the man of Elohim who came from Judah. The man of Elohim went who came from Judah. And he said to his sons, saddle the donkey for me. And they saddled the donkey for him, and he rode on it, and went after the man of Elohim, and found him sitting under a terebinth. And he said to him, are you the man of Elohim who came from Judah? And he said, I am. And he said to him, come home with me and eat bread. And he said, I am not able to return with you or to go in with you, nor am I to eat bread or drink water with you in this place. For word came to me by the word of the Lord, do not eat bread nor drink water there, nor return by the way you came. And he said to him, I too am a prophet like you. And a messenger spoke to me by the word of the Lord, saying, bring him back with you to your house, and let him eat bread and drink water. But he lied to him. So he turned back with him and ate bread in his house and drank water. And it came to be, as they sat at the table, that the word of the Lord came to the prophet who had brought him back. And he cried out to the man of Elohim who came from Judah, saying, thus said the Lord, because you have rebelled against the mouth of the Lord, and have not guarded the command which the Lord your Elohim commanded you, and turned back and ate bread and drank water in the place of which he said to you, do not eat bread nor drink water, your body shall not enter the burial site of your fathers. And it came to be, after he had eaten bread and after he had drunk, that he saddled the donkey for him for the prophet whom he had brought back. And he went and a lion met him on the way and killed him, and his body was thrown on the way. And the donkey was standing by it, and the lion was standing by the body. And see, men were passing by and saw the body thrown on the way while the lion was standing by the body. And they went and reported it in the city where the old prophet dwelt. And the prophet who had brought him back from the way heard it and said, it is the man of Elohim who rebelled against the mouth of the Lord. And the Lord gave him to the lion, and it tore him apart and killed him according to the word of the Lord which he spoke to him. And he spoke to his sons, saying, saddle the donkey for me. And they saddled it. So he went and found his body thrown on the way, and the donkey and the lion standing by the body. The lion had not eaten the body nor mauled the donkey. And the prophet lifted up the body of the man of Elohim and placed it on the donkey and brought it back. And the old prophet came to the city to mourn and to bury him. And he placed his body in his own burial site. And they lamented over him, saying, O my brother. And it came to be, after he had buried him, that he spoke to his son, saying, when I am dead, then you shall bury me in the burial site where the man of Elohim is buried. Lay my bones beside his bones. For the word which he cried out by the word of the Lord against the slaughter place in Bethel, and against the houses of the high places which are in the cities of Shomron, shall certainly come to be. After this event, Jeroboam did not turn from his evil way, but again he made priests from all sorts of people for the high places. Whoever wished, he ordained to become one of the priests of the high places. And this matter was the sin of the house of Jeroboam, even to cut it off and destroy it from the face of the earth. Okay, I know that was long. But guys, I don't want to get eaten by no lion. I don't want you to get eaten by no lion. And this is what happens. And what could have happened to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, right? Well, I don't know if they would have been eaten by a lion, but it would have been bad for them to worship another god. So they were true to what the Lord told them. So I think about this man who got eaten by this lion. He was a servant of God. And this other man was a prophet. And it says that the Spirit lied in verse 18. And he said to him, I too am a prophet. And a messenger spoke to me in the word saying, bring him back with you to your house and let him eat bread and drink water. But he lied to him. What? So this is what bothered me so much, guys. Why did any of this happen? Like, it really bothered me. I mean, I knew that God had a reason. I just didn't understand it. And like usual, I should really think about things I question. Not question as in that they're not true, but question as to, well, I don't understand why, right? Because God is good and faithful to teach us this. And I had an experience where I listened to somebody else who said they were talking to God, and that I shouldn't listen to what God was telling me, but that I should listen to what God was telling them. And it almost killed me. It almost killed me, guys. I got so sick. And finally, when I realized what was happening, I called one of the people that were part of this and said, I'm not going to die because of you. Because what was happening was the lion was tearing my body apart. I mean, it wasn't a lion, it was illness. But that's what happened. God told me to do something that didn't go against his scripture. If somebody else told me not to, I chose to listen to them. I was not being true, like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I was being like this guy. Because they said how I have to do things for God. And this is what Nebuchadnezzar said to these three boys. You have to do what I say. I'm going to come between you and God. Right? It's a cult. That's what that is. Because you're letting somebody come between you and God. And one person should come between you and God is Jesus, Yeshua. And he is God. So there you go. Right? So I'm telling you that to help you to understand how to become the remnant of Israel, which is what we have to be in order to be part of his body. How do we do this? Just be true. Just be like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, right? But also like Moses. So we're going to talk about that next. So Moses goes to Pharaoh, right? And let me get my notes here. Goes to Pharaoh. God hardens Pharaoh's heart. Moses wanted to take the people to worship God, right? And the Pharaoh says, well, I want to know who's going to go. I think this is in chapter 10. Hold on a second. Just so you can go back. I'm not going to read it all, and if I get something wrong, please tell me, guys. Tell me, because I don't want to get anything wrong. I think it was, Exodus 10. Moses wanted to go to worship God, right? And Pharaoh would not let him, and harden his heart. That is also something I was like, why would God harden his heart? I mean, he wants the people to leave. Why not just soften Pharaoh's heart? Why not just soften Pharaoh's heart? Would they have left? Would they have left? Instead, the Israelites stayed while Pharaoh abused them and made their lives harder. But they stayed until God separated them and then delivered them from his wrath, just like he delivered Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. The Israelites were just being true to their faith. They were just, we want to serve God. God did everything. So then Pharaoh said go. Right? And I kind of wondered in reading this, because he says he wants to go worship, let us go to worship our God in Exodus 10, right? And the Pharaoh asks, well, who's going to go? He wants to know who's going to go. But when he finds out, they want to take everybody. They want to take the women, the children, all of their flocks. Then he didn't want to let them go. He only wanted to let certain people go. And so that implies that the people were going to come back. That's what Moses was doing. So what it looked like to me was that Pharaoh wanted to govern how they worship God, who they were, right? There's other times that God separates people. David didn't kill Saul. Saul tried to kill him. See? And I think about Abigail and Nabal. I think my translation says Nabal. God separated her from him. Now, David could have separated her from him. He had done it himself. But then he would have sinned. He would have taken vengeance for himself. She stopped him with her plea for mercy. I think that story is really great because David made a vow to do this. And we're taught that if you make a vow, you should keep it, right? But then he didn't. And it was righteous that he didn't. Why? Because she was asking for mercy. Mercy over sacrifice, right? That's what we have to remember. So, but God separated them. Abigail didn't leave her husband. And then we see in the writings of St. Paul, he talks about if you come to know the Lord, you get a divorce. You don't just leave your husband or your wife. They're not a believer. Because how do you know that they're not going to come to know the Lord? But if they leave you, it's okay. So, it's important to remember how we can play our role as the remnant of Israel while we're among the nations, right? So don't get eaten by a lion. That's rule number 1. Don't get eaten by a lion. So let's just get that out there. Be true. Be brave. Have faith. Like those 3 boys. So going back to what it is to be a remnant, I want to make a couple points of why it's so important and powerful to be cast out. It's powerful to be cast out. How? Why? That doesn't make any sense. Now, this piece of fabric here, before I cut it, it was destined to be a curtain. That's all it was ever going to be, a curtain. But this leftover piece can be anything that I want it to be. It has no preconceived notions on what it is. Because it's been cast out, it's nothing. Which means that through God it can be anything. Power. To be all things to all people, so that I may save some. I think that's what Paul wrote. Powerful. Do I want it to be a pillow? Maybe. Maybe I'll put it in my quilt. Maybe I will, maybe I'll make a lampshade out of it. Maybe I will make a carpet or a tapestry or, I don't know, whatever. Whatever I want it to be. It can be anything. Because It doesn't have the limitation of the idol of self. It's nothing. Do you know, my dad had, I don't think that's a good story. It's a good story, but I think there might be a better one. So think about, I knew a man, and I could see what he could be to God. Oh, the beauty. It's beautiful. But, and it's my opinion, all he could see is what he thought he was, which was still good. But it limited what he could do. Okay, my opinion. I could be wrong about that. That's what I believe happened. Not wise to speculate, but I'm pretty sure that's what's going on. And I think about my father, this is the story that he's saying. And he wanted to be a chaplain, but he had all these ideas of who he was. Chaplain just wasn't one of them. He was being proud, thinking he could be a chaplain. And the devil tricked him, in my opinion. Just talking in his ear. That he was being prideful to think that he could ever be a chaplain. My father was a faithful man. He loved God. He loved his family. He was a good man. So he could have been. So then he did what other people told him, or what he believed he was, which was still amazing and great. He was, and yeah, he was still great. But maybe there was more. That he was limited. What if this piece of fabric said, I cannot be anything but a curtain? There's nothing else I can do. No, I am a curtain. No, you're not. You are a remnant. You are cast out. Or maybe not cast out. Left over. We don't need you. Move on. As long as you think. Right? Or whatever. Move on. Okay. Good. Good. I'm glad. Because now you can be anything. You need power. Power in the Lord. And what He's going to make you. Because you're nothing. And so you can be anything. It's beautiful. So, one of the other powers of being a remnant, and I'm not saying it's our power, it's the power that God gives us as a remnant of His people, right? As the remnant of Israel. He said, will draw others to you, just like it drew Nebuchadnezzar to recognize the sovereignty of God, right? He recognized that there was no other God like the God of Israel, of these boys. So it will draw people to you, right? So I'm gonna leave this with you guys too. Let's say the adversary wants people on his side. And, where's my Bible? Because I want to find this. The adversary wants people on his side. He knows the remnant will draw people because they'll see the power of God. The children of Israel are powerful in their God, right? We have no power of our own. We have no power of our own. So the devil will attach us to other people and to other situations so that he can use us to draw people to his quilt. And we're going to talk about that when we talk about the seam thing. But I'm going to touch on it right now. I think it's important. It kind of goes with the cutting away because we're already apart. We're already a part of another something, right? We're already a part of something. So we have to be cut away from that thing in order to whatever. So in the book of Daniel, we're going back to Daniel. I think it's chapter 11, verse 34. Now let's go back to 33. And those of the people who have insight shall give understanding to many, and they shall stumble by sword and flame, by captivity and plundering for days. And when they stumble, they shall be helped a little help. But many shall join them by flatteries. And some of those who have insight shall stumble to refine them and to cleanse them and to make them white until the time of the end, for it is still for an appointed time. I don't know if this is what that means, because Daniel's hard to understand this section. Daniel's very hard to understand. I don't know if anyone has really figured it out yet, but I always thought about this. But many shall join them by flatteries. And maybe I'm misunderstanding this verse. So if anyone watching this thinks I'm misunderstanding it is your obligation. I'm kidding. I shouldn't shame you into doing this, but please do. Let me know, because I don't want to be wrong, right? But this is how I'm taking this. Why would they attach, if people are struggling, why would you attach yourself to them? Why would people attach to them by flatteries? Why? Because they're the remnant, and they want people to be drawn to them. So if they attach themselves to what they're drawn to, they're going to attach people. So if you're part of the church, and you're the remnant of Israel, and I would say there are remnants of Israel in every church, whether the churches are all, say, righteous. I mean, that's for God to decide, right? But it will draw people to it. And the church will grow because of one remnant. Everyone else can be wolves in sheep's clothing. So it's important that we get cut away, because let's say you're a part of something and somebody came to your church because they trusted you. And they got embedded into this church, and then you realize that it wasn't right. And you were being used as a remnant. It's too late, because that person's now attached to it. I don't want that. I don't want that. No, I don't want that. So I'd rather be alone until the time of the gathering, because at that point, then God knows. He knows it all. And I have to trust that. We all have to trust that. So I share that because I want you to understand that it's important to be cut away, because once you are a remnant, no longer attached to the world, because you have to be cut away from the world in order to do that, then in the power that is the remnant, you will draw many to him, not to you, to him. Just like Nebuchadnezzar. Right? That's great. Okay, well, he still wasn't like an Israelite, but he did recognize who God was. So, okay. So that's all fine and dandy. We can just sit there and let people be mean to us and everything until they cast us out. But that's not very encouraging. That doesn't feel very encouraging to me. And so I really started thinking about okay, so a couple months back, maybe it wasn't a couple. Yeah, it was probably a couple months ago. I thought about Jesus, Yeshua, right? Because it's him. It's always going to be him. So, Yeshua, he's our example. We have to strive to be like him in all things. And so when we look at how he treated people and how he dealt with people, because he was cast out, He was cast out, executed, and died. He was suffered all of our consequences. How did he do that? Right? Now, he did it a little different. I mean, obviously, because he was saving us. He was doing that for a reason. I think sometimes people think we need to just lay down and be executed because Jesus did. Well, he was doing it to save us. Because they wanted to kill him for a while. At least that's my understanding of it, right? He died when he died to save us. He had a purpose in what he was doing. But when you look at the relationships that he had with people, he didn't cast anyone out. He was not welcome, right? But it reminds me of when the Lord God says, "Draw close to me, and I will draw close to you." Right? This is what Jesus did. Anybody who wanted to know Jesus, to know Yeshua, could. Even the children, the unclean, the lepers, the woman who was bleeding, she was unclean. It was sinful for her to even approach him, right? Because she was unclean. She was bleeding. He didn't cast her aside. The tax collectors, the prostitutes, if they wanted to know him, he would let them eat at his table. And this was the question that I had with a friend of mine. We were talking, and I was like, God didn't cast Judas out. He knew what he was doing. He could have called him out on it. Even when he rebuked the devil that was speaking to Peter, right? He didn't say, "Get out, Peter." No, he didn't. If they wanted to know him, he would allow them to know him, to love him. Yeah. And the greatest commandment, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, and all your soul, and all your mind. And then to love your neighbor as yourself. And we're going to go into that. You see, the Pharisees approached Jesus. They talked to him, or they wouldn't have had these confrontations. He didn't cast them away. He didn't say, "Get out." He didn't. They did. He didn't. They did. Right? It's powerful. So why did he do it that way? It's love. Right? It's love. Knowing someone, understanding someone, loving someone. Draw close to him and he'll draw close to you. They had to throw him out. And in so doing, through his resurrection, people witnessed what God was doing for them, dying for their sins, paying their price, the price. But if he hadn't been cast out first, I'm going to cry thinking about it. So, I want to read two sections, and actually I didn't really prepare the greatest this week for this, but I really just wanted to do this because I've been procrastinating I shouldn't say procrastinating. I just had this idea of how I should do this, and I realized God always knows the best way. So, and this is actually cool because it's the Torah portion. Well, it's the gospel portion for this week. If you follow what I follow, so. And in Mark 12:28 through 31, we see Yeshua recite this thing. This is what it's all about. I don't know what is going on with my fingers today. I can't seem to get these open. Okay. So, in Mark 12:28, and one of the, okay. And one of the scribes coming near him, hearing them reasoning together, knowing that he had answered them well, asked him, "What is the first command of all?" And Yeshua answered him, "The first of all the commands is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord our Elohim, the Lord is one." All right, so my translation says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our Elohim, the Lord is one. And you shall love the Lord your Elohim with all your heart, and with all your being, and with all your mind, and all your strength." This is the first command. And the second, like it, is this: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other command greater than these. Okay? Then we see back in Leviticus 19:18, which is the Torah portion for this week. And I'm just going to read this part. It talks about a lot of stuff in Leviticus 19, but I'm just going to focus on this. Do not take vengeance or bear a grudge against the children of your people, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord. Right? And when we talk about thread, because I'm going to be doing a whole thing on thread and whatever. Anyway, there's so much I want to say about Quilt. It's amazing what he's taught me. But when we love God with all our heart and all our soul and all our might, and we love our neighbor as ourselves, this is what makes us the body. I will add, and I don't have the verse in front of me, probably should have, when Peter was asked who Jesus was, and he told him, and on that rock he will build his church, right? Because he recognized who Jesus was. At least that's what I believe it was. Let me see if I can find the verse. So when we do that, when we love God with all our heart and all our soul and all our might, and part of that is recognizing him. And I believe Peter, he saw him. Saw him. He loved him. He could see who he was. And it's that makes us part of the church. Right? Now, we have to love him, right? Not just see him, because even the demons, they tremble, right? They know who he is. They can see who he is, but they don't love him. So, this is the requirement to be the remnant of Israel. And if you are that, I don't care if you're Episcopal, I don't care if you're Presbyterian, I don't care if you're a Quaker, if you're, it doesn't matter to me. You keep Shabbat, you don't. That's not, it doesn't matter to me. Because he didn't say, hey, go decide who's worthy to sit at your table. He said, love your neighbor as yourself. And love God. See him for who they are. I mean, it doesn't matter. If you love me, I will love you. If you draw close to me, I will draw close to you, because that's what he does. That's what he does. And I want to be like him. Right? And that will bring unification or quilt of the body. but it will also bring division. Because when we are that to people who do not, God will separate us from them. So in Matthew 16, in verse 13 of chapter 16, Yeshua says, Now Yeshua came into the parts of Caesarea Philippi. He asked his taught ones, saying, Who do men say the son of Adam is? And they said, Some say Yohanan the Immerser, and others Eliyahu, and others Yirmiyahu, or one of the prophets. He said to them, And you, who do you say I am? And Shimon Kepha answering, said, You are the Messiah, the Son of the living Elohim. And Yeshua answering said to him, Blessed are you, Shimon bar Yonan, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in the heavens. And I also say to you that you are my Kepha, and on this rock I shall build my assembly, and the gates of Sheol shall not overcome it. And I shall give you the keys of the reign of the heavens, and whatever you bind on earth shall be having been bound in the heavens, and whatever you loosen on earth shall be having been loosed in the heavens. Wow, right? Peter saw him. It was on that rock, right? Love the Lord your God and your neighbor as yourself. So in the process of doing that, all you have to do is be you. Guys, that's all you have to do. And when I say be you, it's be the remnant of Israel. God's going to take care of everything else. He will harden the hearts of those that he doesn't want you with. Be glad that he does, because in the separation there is power. His power and his will and his providence. He is going to make these things happen. And I know it's painful. I've been through it. You think, what did I do wrong? And you question everything done. And wonder if you should apologize and all of these things. Sometimes you should. If you're wrong, you should apologize. Okay, I say I'm sorry a lot. But the most important thing is just loving him. Right? He will cut out some beautiful squares, and he'll even sew little pieces together. I wish I had a bigger one, but I think they're already they're further in the process, so I didn't have one to show you guys. But sew some pieces together even. But he first has to cut them out, and sometimes that makes you feel really small, really alone, terribly alone. But when he starts to bring us together, oh, it will be so beautiful. And it will be just such a wonderful work of art. I just want to remind you guys, though, as we get cast out, because it's going to happen. It's going to happen if you do what God wants you to do. It's going to happen. But don't get discouraged with the people either. And this actually, it happened in my own life. And I really want to share this testimony because I think it's beautiful. My husband divorced me. He left me. We had been separated for a while, and he finally decided it was done. And he witnessed the trials I went through, not necessarily with because of the divorce, but because he was still in my life, my son's life, he saw very closely when I also was discarded from other groups I was a part of, and some of the things I suffered with. And I'm not sure what reached him, but I'm gonna cry. Not because I'm unhappy, but because I'm happy. He came to really, I could see the Lord work in his life. And drew him closer to God in a way that he never did when we were married. And in going through that divorce and enduring the trials of that, he witnessed in some way, and I'm speculating there because I don't know exactly what happened. I wasn't in his head. He witnessed the Lord somehow, right? And it brought him to the Lord in a deeper way that it was worth it. So when people cast you out, when they see you stand in that fire and not be burned, still loving God, even in the fire, even in the darkness, in the abyss, you're still standing there, defiant to the world, saying, I love God, even now, even after you cast me aside. Can't change it. Nebuchadnezzar. He saw. There's other people that have cast me aside. And with all my heart, I hope that they see that. Because the last bit of Jeremiah that I had first read, right? I think it was Jeremiah 23. Was it 23? Yes, Jeremiah 23. Okay, so Jeremiah 23. Woe to the shepherds destroying and scattering the sheep of my pasture, declares the Lord. Therefore, thus said the Lord Elohim of Israel, against the shepherds who feed my people. You have scattered my flock, driven them away, and have not tended them. See, I am punishing you for the evil of your deeds, declares the Lord. Therefore I shall gather the remnant of my flock out of all the lands where I have driven them, and shall bring them back to their fold, and they shall bear and increase. Now, what I wanted to point out was that the shepherds scattered the flock and drove them away, and then didn't go to tend them. The only way that there would have been something to gather in was that they were there, right? So they were driven away. So he's going to gather that. So that had to happen first. And I shall raise up shepherds over them, and they shall feed them, and they shall fear no more, nor be discouraged, nor shall they be lacking, declares the Lord. And it reminds me, well, that's a verse in Revelation, but we don't need to go there. See, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when I shall raise for David a branch of righteousness, and a sovereign shall reign and act wisely and do right ruling and righteousness in the earth. Now, I strongly encourage you to read all of Daniel 23, or Jeremiah 23, sorry. But I'm going to kind of skip to the end. I've read this chapter, and it goes into quite a few different things, but what concerns me is the last part, okay? But you essentially, and it's talking about the prophets, because, he was first talking about the shepherds, and then he talked about the priests and the prophets, and that have become defiled. Even in my house, I have found their evil. Right? This is in verse 11. But in the last two verses, it says in 39, therefore, see, I shall utterly forget you and cast you away from my presence, along with the city that I gave you and your fathers. And I shall put an everlasting reproach on you and an everlasting shame that is not forgotten. And the reason that I'm saying this is it's reminiscent of that verse that says, shake the dust from your feet, right? Because here, now this is talking about the pastors, right, specifically, but, just in general, like this is very upsetting to me. In Matthew 10:14, let's see, where is this here? I really should buy some tabs and put them on this Bible. I don't have any. In Matthew 10:14, no, I'm in 14 here. So it says that when they go into, okay, and into whatever city or village you enter, ask who is worthy in it, and stay there until you leave. And as you enter into a house, greet it. And if the house is worthy, let your peace come upon it. But if it is not worthy, let your peace return to you. And whoever does not receive you nor hear your words when you leave that house, shake the dust off your feet shake off the dust from your feet. Truly I say to you, it shall be more bearable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah in the day of judgment than for that city. See, I send you out as sheep in the midst of wolves, therefore be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. Okay, it reminds me of that because here in chapter 23 of Jeremiah, the shepherds have driven the people away. And the shepherds, the priests, the prophets, right, all of them, the leadership is this is how I see this. Will drive the people away, but what ends up happening to them? They themselves shall be cast out. And it says, I shall utterly forget you and cast you away from my presence. Right? So what they're doing is going to be done to them. And honestly, I don't want that for anyone. I don't want anyone, not even a scrap of this fabric, to be discarded. I don't. Because it would be better, they, in Matthew, they're rejecting them. They're putting them aside. And it would be better for them, for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah in the day of judgment than for that city. But it's not for us to decide. We're not the ones doing it. And the power of the remnant. See, if you hold true to yourself, don't get eaten by a lion, don't compromise who you are, but stand in the fire. And maybe, just maybe, you'll win a heart. And I can say that's worth it. It's worth it. 1,000 times over, it's worth it. So good luck, remnants. I love you all. And if you have any comments, please send them to me if there's something that you want me to look at. And have a blessed day.